Be informed, be inspired. Join us for the Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond show. Tune in and listen for both modern and ancient wisdom on all things maternity, parenting and sacred women's business. Right here on the Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond show.
And we are in the studio today with this very special guest, Millie Hill. And we'll get her to say quickly hello. Hello, Millie.
Hello, hi, great to be here.
So great to have you here. And Sally Cusack is also here. It's a huge treat for us because we're big fans of you, Millie, and really excited that you're here.
Thank you. How wonderful to have big fans.
So awesome. So, your work is so amazing, and we're so proud and honoured to be able to feature you on the show today, and the amazing work that you and your big team, I know, supporting the Positive Birth Movement. But
thank you.
Yeah, so founder of the Positive Birth Movement and author of the book, The Positive Birth Book, Millie Hill, from the UK via Sydney. So Millie is down under for the 32nd Home Birth Australia Conference and has ventured up Byron Way for a special appearance and talk on the Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond talks. Really excited about that as well. And we've got loads and loads and loads of great info coming your way today about seeing birth in a positive way. Really important for everybody involved. For people listening in today, if you have friends or family with unresolved birth trauma, no matter how long ago, there are birth trauma specific resources such as birthtalk.org, so that's birthtalk.org. Birthing from Within, just look up Birthing from Within online and you should be able to find, there's several options there, and panda.org.au, which are dedicated to supporting women, birthers and their families. Our guest today is Millie Hill, founder of the Positive Birth Movement. Millie set up the Positive Birth Movement from her living room in 2012, motivated by both her own birth experiences and her growing frustration whenever she heard the words, "they didn't let me," in a birth story. She has since gone to become a well-recognized voice for women in the birth world, writing extensively in the mainstream press, for example on BestDaily, Telegraph and Guardian, and appearing at various conferences and talks. She has 3 small children and lives in Somerset in the UK. Welcome, Millie. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
It's so awesome. Millie has come especially all the way from the UK to attend the 32nd Home Birth Australia Conference in Sydney, and that has just finished. Yep. And we've been so lucky to be able to have Millie come up to Byron. I know you're exhausted from all the travelling and excitement and meeting so many people.
Yeah, I'm running purely on adrenaline at the moment. Nothing else.
My goodness. I so know, as a mother, I know that feeling, and as a radio producer, I know that feeling as well. Yeah. And we're so grateful, super grateful.
Amazing to be here. I'm so excited. I've never been to Australia before, so this is a real adventure for me.
It's exciting. Well, we're going to show her around Byron Bay for sure. We're going to show you around.
Excellent.
And hopefully you'll have a beautiful time here as well. It is a bit raining, which is unusual for this. I mean, not unusual. It's great to have rain at the moment because we've been a little bit dry. But it has been quite hot in the last few weeks. So hopefully you'll get a bit of sun as well.
I hope so. I'm hoping for it because it's horrible in the UK at the moment. It's nearly winter time. So I brought my swimming costume and I was hoping for some sunshine. But I haven't had any yet.
So the Positive Birth Movement is a grassroots movement spreading positivity about childbirth via a global network of free positive birth groups linked by social media. Is that right?
That's right.
So what began in 2012 as one small meeting in the living room of writer and campaigner Millie Hill, who's here in the studio with us, is now a global network of over 450, is that right, real-life groups, with a massive social media presence too. And they just keep on growing. Would you like to let us know why you think that is?
Well, I mean, it just seems, I often talk about this because people often ask me, how did you do it? How did you set up this huge organisation? And it's really, my answer is always really, it set itself up. It was like one small idea just snowballed. And I think that's because there's a huge appetite out there, which I just sort of inadvertently tapped into. I didn't realize, as we often don't realize, that what I was feeling and thinking about birth was being felt and thought about birth by so many women around the world. Amongst birth workers, I think birth workers were looking for a way to start a new kind of dialogue really about birth that moved away from the polarization of home versus hospital and looked at how we can just improve birth for all women, no matter what their choices are. But amongst women themselves as well, there's also a huge appetite to just, hear birth talk, talk about birth in a new way, because people are so frightened. Everybody was scared. And I was coming from a place where I knew exactly how that felt, because I had been that frightened person who, was totally terrified. And so it just tapped into something, I think. And literally within hours of my sort of floating the idea out on the amazing, wonderful internet, my inbox and my messages were just flooded with people who wanted to get involved.
That's incredible. That's really incredible. So what is the underlying idea behind the positive birth movement in one sentence?
Oh, in one sentence.
If you can, or in
That's
2 or
tricky.
3.
I'm not very good at one sentence answers, I don't think. Basically, it's really about women coming together and talking to other women. I suppose in one sentence, it's just women talking to women. It's breaking down that power dynamic that we have in antenatal classes, I guess, where it's the expert who knows everything about birth and the women who listen and learn. It's about shared information amongst women. So it's kind of a really, really old idea, actually, brought forward into the 21st century and bringing social media in as well to kind of really make those lines of connection even bigger and wider.
It's so important. I wonder if you'd like to share with us, just before you go into it, how was your time at the Home Birth Conference?
Well, it was absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
There was such an amazing atmosphere there. This room full of sort of 200, basically women. I think there were 1 or 2 men who all, were thinking and feeling some of the same thoughts and really sharing such a huge passion for women's rights and, issues around birth together. So it really was. It was just a really beautiful, warm environment and full of lovely people. I had a lovely time.
Oh, that's so cool. And you got to meet some of the heroes, our heroes, and the heroes of the birth world, Hannah Dahlan, Maria Dempsey and Rachel Reed. And that's just to name a few. And those are some of my personal heroes as well, those women.
Yes.
And
absolutely wonderful to meet them. And they are literally powerhouses, they're everything that you just want to hang on their every word. They're so knowledgeable and so passionate, and they really understand what's going on in the birth world and what we need to do to improve it. So it's just fantastic to spend time with them.
I think what you're doing is incredible, because what really, these stories are so there. They just haven't been spoken out loud. And I think women, when they get together and they start talking, there's no stopping them. And these issues around childbirth and stories and different people's perspectives and women's experiences, especially when there's been trauma, where they literally might not even be able to process that for many, many years. And I've heard stories from 40 years later only starting to be examined and looked at of birth trauma specifically, and the impact of that on motherhood and on the child throughout life. So I think it's amazing what you're doing. You're opening the door. The positive birth movement is opening the door for women to come and chat to each other, to come and open up about their stories and what's meaningful to them, to their unique story. And when women are able to share and hear that other women had the similar meaningful experiences or similar needs around childbirth that weren't met perhaps, or experiences that were more negative, but we're able to see them in a positive light, or able to unravel them in a positive way. I guess that's the right way to say that. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful service that you're giving to women around the world. And
yeah, it's great. And I think also the benefits of women talking to other women is that they hear about the choices that other women are making. So that's opening up those lines of communication again. We're going from this sort of isolated place where people were sort of just going on what the women in their local area were telling them to, widening up those lines of communication, again, using social media. When you hear about what options are being offered to other women around the world in birth, it makes you stop and think a minute and think, well, hang on, I've been told that I can't do that because I've been told that's not what, it's not safe. But in just 100 miles further north, everybody's doing it. So why is that, So it's getting people to ask questions as well. Through hearing other women's stories, people are starting to ask more questions about their care.
Yeah, it's so important. I think that's the biggest thing. I think being able to ask those questions, I think that you really touched on the most important thing I feel around birth, and what we talk about a lot here at Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond is often people just don't know what their rights are and what their their human rights, as in childbirth in particular, what their rights are. And I think it's really important to look into that and to know that they can, that they can ask more questions, they can ask for more information, they can make decisions for their own selves, for their own bodies.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, we've had a big problem over the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years in birth, with the power dynamic being completely shifted against women, so that women feel they just have to do what the doctor says, and that birth is something that happens to them and that is done to them rather than something that they do themselves. And I think that power dynamic is shifting and changing at the moment. And like you say, people are realising they do have the right to ask questions. It's not about being, starting a war or, working against your caregivers. It's about just knowing that this is a situation in which you are allowed, to use the allowed word again, you are allowed to challenge, to ask questions and to find out more about what's going to happen to you.
I'm Analia Tia, and with Millie Hill here from the UK, the founder of the Positve Birth Movement and the author of the Positve Birth book as well. And we've just been chatting a little bit in the break about Dr. Sarah Buckley, who's another one of our heroes, and she's written all about not just written but researched, has done major research into the natural cascade of hormones during childbirth and the relevance of oxytocin. As
we all love oxytocin.
So important. And if you haven't heard about that, the importance of oxytocin during childbirth, we highly recommend you look that up.
It really is one of the most important pieces of information that a pregnant woman can have, really, is to understand how the hormones of labour work. And as soon as you say that, I can feel people switching off because it sounds, we're going to go down some scientific avenue. It's dead simple. Just think about the environment in which you feel safe, warm and loving, and think about, the environment in which you would be happy to make love. And there you're already on your way to understanding how oxytocin works. That candlelight, coziness, all of these things that make us feel really safe and in that kind of loving mood. And you need to be in that environment when you're giving birth as well, because oxytocin is the main hormone of birth and you can't give birth without it. People often say to me, what should I pack in my hospital bag? And I say it doesn't really matter, because anything that you forget you can get a replacement for, but the one thing you can't give birth without is oxytocin. You have to take it with you.
I love that. That's so good. And how oxytocin is impacted is another big piece of information, is that when it doesn't work in unison with adrenaline. So if adrenaline comes in, then it takes over, because for also another simple reason, for survival and to keep the woman safe. So labour would shut down if the woolly mammoth kind of turned up. It's kind of the basic principle of it. So we need to try and think about the environments women are giving birth in and how we can stop adrenaline from coming into those environments. And I always say that is a great role for dads. Dads often want to know, what can I do at the birth to help? Because I think dads tend to, and I don't want to make generalizations, but men tend to want to do something, to take action to fix a problem. And what they can do, and the role they can play, is, I call it the guardians of oxytocin, because it makes it sound cool. But basically, cool. Just be in charge of oxytocin. Be in charge of the environment. Make sure, that you guard the door. You don't let people come barging in. You keep the lights down low, and you keep that loving environment going, and keep telling your partner that, how wonderful and beautiful and brilliant she is, and keep that love in the room. And that's a brilliant job that all dads can do, and partners, not just dads, obviously, partners. Yeah, absolutely. I think my husband was really lucky. We went to a calm birth workshop together just before I gave birth, and a few months before I gave birth, with a beautiful woman called Rain Sharp, who's local to our area, and she does calm birth workshops. And he got so much out of that, and that was what he got out of it, that he's the protector, the guardian of the space. And he literally put, outside our house, big closets that we had and all sorts of things to kind of nobody
really
can come in. Yeah, he literally
built a wall.
He literally built a wall, and he felt so and it meant so much to me to know that I didn't even know what he was doing because I was in labour, but it just meant so much to me. I felt him out there making sure that nobody gets in, nobody disrupts me, nobody disrupts the space, this important space. And I think, that was the biggest the biggest help that I had in labour, to know that he was out there making sure that